Press your finger against a glass. You leave behind a pattern. Unlike anyone else's on Earth, police can use it to identify you. Your phone can use it as a password. Even identical twins do not share the same print. But evolution did not create fingerprints for crime scenes, passports, or smartphones. So why are our fingertips covered in thousands of tiny ridges? The obvious answer seems simple: grip. They look like the tread on a tire, designed to stop objects from slipping. Then scientists tested that idea and discovered something strange. On some smooth surfaces, fingerprints can actually reduce friction, which means their most important job may not be helping you hold things. It may be helping you feel them. For years, fingerprints seemed easy to explain. Their patterns looked like miniature tire treads, designed to keep objects from slipping. But when researchers pressed fingertips against smooth surfaces, they found something unexpected. The raised lines reduced the amount of skin making contact. On dry, flat materials, that could actually mean less friction, not more. Fingerprints were clearly not simple anti-slip tires, but the result changes when water enters the picture. A thin layer of moisture can separate skin from a surface, almost like a tire beginning to lose contact with a wet road. The channels between fingerprint lines may give that moisture somewhere to escape, helping the finger maintain contact with a wet branch, fruit, or tool. So fingerprints may not maximize friction everywhere. They may help the hand adapt when the surface suddenly changes. But grip is only part of the story. The answer becomes clearer when a finger starts moving. Slide your finger across a wooden table. The surface feels smooth. Under a microscope, it is filled with tiny irregularities. As the pattern on your fingertip passes over them, the skin begins to vibrate. Those vibrations travel into sensory receptors below the surface. Some detect pressure. Others notice stretching or rapid movement. Together, they allow the brain to recognize details too small to see. Paper, fabric, wood, glass. Each produces a different vibration. The sensitivity is almost absurd. In one experiment, people could distinguish a flat surface from one covered with lines only 13 nanometers high. That is thousands of times thinner than a human hair. Fingerprints are not solely responsible for this ability, but they help turn microscopic texture into vibrations the nervous system can detect. The microscopic lines translate texture into a signal the nervous system can read. They also help detect the first moment of slipping. When a cup begins moving inside your hand, small areas of skin shift before the entire object falls. The nervous system notices the distortion, then adjusts your grip automatically. Fingerprints may not give us the strongest possible hold. They give us something more useful: information. And one animal developed an almost identical solution, despite being separated from us by tens of millions of years. Koalas are not primates. Their ancestors did not inherit fingerprints from ours. Yet their fingers are covered in loops, curves, and branching patterns remarkably similar to human prints. Under magnification, the resemblance can be surprisingly difficult to distinguish at first glance. This is convergent evolution. Two unrelated animals faced a similar challenge, and evolution produced a similar tool. Koalas spend their lives climbing, gripping branches, and carefully selecting eucalyptus leaves. Humans and our primate ancestors also depended on precise contact with branches and objects. Nature reached the same answer twice: a highly sensitive surface, covered in microscopic patterns. That suggests fingerprints were never created to identify individuals. Their uniqueness came later, as a side effect of building fingers capable of precise touch, and that uniqueness begins before we are even born. Before birth, a fetus develops temporary swellings on its fingertips. They are called volar pads. As the fingers grow, these pads begin to flatten and regress. At the same time, the outer skin starts forming microscopic lines across their surface. The shape of the pad influences the result. A flatter pad is more likely to produce an arch. An intermediate one often creates a loop. A higher, rounder pad can encourage a whirl. But this is only the beginning. Growth waves also spread from several regions, near the nail, the fingertip, and the crease where the finger bends. When those waves meet, they curve, split, and lock into a permanent pattern. Genes influence the general design, but tiny differences in timing, finger shape, and development determine the final details. The body writes the rules. The growing finger creates the pattern. That is why even identical twins, beginning with almost the same genetic instructions, never receive exactly the same fingerprints. Identical twins begin with almost the same DNA. Their fingerprints may share the same general pattern. Both may have loops, arches, or whorls. But the smallest details never line up perfectly. One ridge ends earlier, another splits in a different place. A curve bends at a slightly different angle. These differences are not created by genes alone. They appear because no two fingers develop under exactly the same conditions. Tiny changes in growth, pressure, blood flow, and timing alter the final pattern. The instructions may be nearly identical, the construction process is not. That is why fingerprints are so useful for identification. Their uniqueness was not designed. It emerged from biological development,
where even the smallest variation becomes permanent. But what happens when the pattern never appears at all? Some people are born without fingerprints. A tiny number of people are born with completely smooth fingertips. The condition is called dermatoglyphia. There are no ordinary loops, no arches, no whorls. The skin still works, but the usual microscopic landscape is missing. Some affected people also have fewer sweat glands in their hands and feet. For most of history, this difference caused little trouble. Then the modern world began using fingerprints as identity. Airport scanners could not read them. Border systems rejected them. Police databases had nothing to compare. The condition became informally known as immigration delay disease. It reveals something strange. Humans can live without fingerprints. They are not essential for survival. But their absence shows how deeply the patterns are connected to the development of skin, sweat glands, and touch.
And for nearly everyone who has them, the design remains remarkably stable. Your fingerprints touch thousands of surfaces. They are scratched, cut, burned, and constantly rubbed against the world, yet the original pattern usually returns. That is because the visible lines are supported by structures deeper inside the skin. A shallow cut damages only the surface. As the skin repairs itself, the same pattern grows back. To permanently change a fingerprint, an injury must reach the deeper layer where the ridges are anchored. Even then, the scar does not erase identity. It becomes another identifying feature. Fingerprints also grow with the body. A baby's print is tiny, an adult's is much larger, but the relationships between the lines remain. The pattern stretches without being rewritten. That accidental stability gave humans something evolution never intended, a biological signature, carried from before birth until death. Fingerprints were not created to identify us. Their individuality is a side effect. Evolution built a sensitive surface, capable of detecting texture, moisture, and the first movement of a slipping object. The pattern formed through a developmental process that never repeats itself perfectly. Then the skin preserved that pattern for life. 3 separate features came together: sensitivity, uniqueness, permanence. Evolution created the sensor. Humans turned it into a password. Final. Every time your phone recognizes your finger, it is using a system far older than technology. Those microscopic lines may once have helped our ancestors feel the surface of a branch, control a stone tool, or notice an object slipping before it fell. Koalas evolved a remarkably similar solution because their lives demanded the same kind of precise contact. And before you were born,
temporary pads on your fingers help shape a pattern that no other person would ever reproduce exactly. Your fingerprints do not exist to tell the world who you are. Their original job was more immediate, to tell your brain what you were touching. Identification came later, a human invention built on top of an ancient sensory tool.